With virtually any crosstown or intercity rivalry, there is going to be an imbalance. Even in a city like Liverpool, with two of England's biggest clubs, Liverpool's trophy haul far exceeds Everton's. And whilst Manchester City may now rule the roost in Manchester, historically they fall a long way short of the behemoths of Manchester United. In fact, as I speak, I'm just thinking that something along the lines of 7 most evenly contested derbies or rivalries might make for an interesting video. Anyhow, that's another video for another time, and today we're focused on 7 totally unbalanced rivalries. A short while back I made a video about 7 one-sided rivalries in an emotional sense, as in one club hates the other whilst the other is unmoved about them, but today's video is about rivalries that are incredibly one-sided out on the pitch. There are far more than 7 examples I could have chosen from, there are hundreds in fact. These are just some of the most interesting and emphatic that I've compiled for your viewing pleasure. So strap in, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and enjoy. Here are 7 teams who are forever in the shadows of their neighbours. Paris FC. As France's capital and one of Europe's few genuine megacities, one would expect Paris to have a vibrant footballing scene. There is certainly an enormous passion for football in Paris, and the region has arguably produced a higher calibre of player than any other in Europe over the last 10 years. But France's capital has not historically been a significant force within the French game. Between the introduction of professionalism in French football in 1932 and 2012, a period of 80 years, teams from Paris won a combined total of 2 Ligue 1 titles. Those 2 teams were RC Paris in 1936 and Paris Saint-Germain in 1994. Meanwhile, Marseille and Saint-Etienne won 10 league titles, and even the tiny city-state of Monaco won 8. Paris' footballing history is quite an interesting one, with Paris Saint-Germain being founded in 1970 by virtue of a merger of Paris FC and Stade Saint-Germain. However, just 3 years later, Paris FC decided to split from PSG once again, and Paris FC retained their top flight status, whilst PSG were forced down to the 3rd tier. PSG would soon get their revenge, winning promotion in 1974, the same year in which Paris FC were relegated. Paris FC haven't competed in Ligue 1 since the 1978-79 season, so they have really been in PSG's shadow for the last 40 years, but the gulf has been greatly widened during the last 10. Since their Qatari takeover in 2011, PSG have won 7 out of a possible 9 league titles, meanwhile Paris FC only narrowly avoided relegation from Ligue 2 this season. Levante. Despite being a La Liga club and having been in the top flight of Spanish football for the last decade, Levante do not have a significant global presence. In fact, I suspect a lot of people outside of Spain wouldn't know which city Levante are based in, and subsequently, which team's shadow they have long been living in. I won't keep those people on tenterhooks any longer. Levante are based in Valencia, and they were founded 10 years earlier than the team you all already knew were from Valencia. Levante were founded in 1909, and their rivals Valencia joined the party in 1919. Up until the mid-1930s, there was little to split the 2 clubs, neither having won a national championship, but both having reached the latter stages of the Copa del Rey once. Following the Spanish Civil War though, Valencia established themselves as a force within the Spanish game, winning 3 La Liga titles and reaching 4 Copa del Rey finals during the 1940s. In total, Valencia have won the La Liga title 6 times, the Copa del Rey 8 times, and the UEFA Cup once, making them the 5th most successful football club in Spain, along with the fact that they have played in 2 Champions League finals. Levante, meanwhile, haven't won any major silverware and haven't come closer than that Copa del Rey semi-final appearance way back in 1935. In 33 games between the 2 clubs, Levante have won 7, Valencia have won 19, and the rest, obviously, ended in draws. 1860 Munich. As anyone who watched my recent video taking a look at the very first season of the Bundesliga will know, 1860 Munich were founding members of Germany's new nationwide top flight in 1963, meanwhile Bayern Munich were not. It was in the 1965-66 season that Bayern first competed in the Bundesliga, finishing 3rd, meanwhile crosstown rivals 1860 Munich won their first and last German championship. At that moment in time, Bayern may very briefly have been in 1860's shadow, but all that was about to change. By the late 1960s, Gerd Müller was hitting 30+ goal seasons, and Franz Beckenbauer was becoming one of, if not the best player on earth. Bayern won their first Bundesliga title in 1969, which was only their 2nd German championship, but unlike 1860, it certainly wouldn't be their last. In the 50 years since, Bayern have become the dominant force within the German game, and they now have a record 29 German championships, a record 19 DFB Pokals, and 5 European Cups to their name. 1860 Munich, meanwhile, have won nothing of note since 1966. That sounds familiar, and their 2 DFB Pokals that preceded that title win. From 38 meetings in total, Bayern have won 23 times, 1860 Munich 8 times, and 7 games have ended in stalemate. Sparta Rotterdam. The Netherlands famously has a big 3 made up of Ajax, Feyenoord, and PSV. Between them, the trio have won 57 of a possible 62 league titles during the professional era of Dutch football. The teams neighbouring Ajax and PSV are arguably even more in their shadows than Sparta are in relation to Feyenoord, but many of them are either amateur or semi-professional clubs, hence their omission. Sparta Rotterdam are a proper football club competing in the Eredivisie and playing out of a fantastic little stadium. Founded in 1888, a full 20 years before Feyenoord, Sparta have been crowned Dutch champions 6 times, but only once, during the professional era, way back in 1959. Rotterdam actually has the most professional football teams of any city in the Netherlands, with Sparta and Feyenoord being joined by Excelsior, although the rivalry with Excelsior is less fierce since they are Feyenoord's former feeder club. Feyenoord have won 15 Dutch championships, including 10 in the professional era, and their fiercest rivalry is with Ajax rather than Sparta. In a whopping 111 meetings between Sparta and Feyenoord, Feyenoord have emerged victorious 66 times, Sparta 19 times, and 26 games have ended in draws. When this season's Eredivisie was brought to an abrupt end, Feyenoord were in 3rd place, with Sparta down in 11th. Arsenal Kyiv. There are more obvious examples that I could have included in this 7, but it's always good to have the odd left field inclusion. Kyiv is the 7th largest city in Europe and by far the largest in Ukraine. Until recently, with the rise of Shakhtar Donetsk, Dynamo Kyiv were the most dominant force within the Ukrainian game, and one of the most successful clubs domestically and across the continent from the former Soviet Union. Naturally then, Arsenal Kyiv always faced an uphill task, escaping the shadow of their local Goliaths. Founded in 1925 as a works or factory team, Arsenal Kyiv do not have a past quite so illustrious as their near neighbours. In fact, the 2 teams didn't even meet in a competitive fixture for the first time until 1995, when Arsenal Kyiv won promotion to the Ukrainian top league, now known as the Ukrainian Premier League. Arsenal Kyiv's highest finish came during that very first season when they finished 4th, but disaster struck in the 2013-14 campaign when the club was expelled from the Ukrainian Premier League and had to apply to join the lowly 5th tier of Ukrainian football. Last season was Arsenal Kyiv's first back in the big time, but they were relegated once more. Dynamo may have lost their stronghold in Ukraine in recent years, but they still very much rule the roost when it comes to Kyiv. In 24 meetings between Arsenal Kyiv and Dynamo Kyiv, Dynamo have won 21 times, 3 games have ended in draws, and poor old Arsenal Kyiv haven't won 1. Boa Vista. Just like the Netherlands, Portugal has a very well-defined big 3. Between them, Benfica, Porto and Sporting Club de Portugal have won 83 out of a possible 85 league titles, a dominance that teeters on the tedious at this stage. The 3 clubs all hail from Portugal's 2 largest cities, Lisbon and Porto, but whilst Benfica and Sporting enjoy a bitter rivalry in the nation's capital, Porto have a very one-sided rivalry with comparative minnows Boa Vista. In fairness, Boa Vista are one of only 2 clubs outside of those 3 to have won a league title, their only triumph coming in 2001. Porto, by comparison, have won 28 league titles, in addition to winning the UEFA Cup twice, and of course the European Cup/Champions League twice. That's a level of disparity you won't see in too many cities, but it's one Boa Vista fans have laboured with for the last century. When the club won their first league title in 2001, there were those who proclaimed that the Big 3 was now a Big 4. Boa Vista had threatened to win the league in the previous 2 seasons, finishing 2nd and 4th, and the following year they finished as runners-up once again. Those prophecies would prove to be untrue though, and by 2008, the club faced enforced relegation from the top flight for match fixing. At the time of recording, Porto are top of the Primeira Liga, whilst Boa Vista are down in 11th, and Portugal's Big 3 remains very much intact. Espanyol. As I said in the introduction, there are hundreds of teams who could have made this 7, but there seem to be few better places to wrap up than with Espanyol. Virtually any club on earth would be in the shadow of Barcelona were they based in the same city as the Catalan Giants, and Espanyol are the unfortunate team to find themselves in that position. Whilst Barcelona's biggest rivals Real Madrid have very noisy neighbours in the form of Atletico Madrid, Barca rarely hear a peep out of Espanyol. In their 119-year history, Espanyol have never won a league title, with their only Copa del Rey success coming in 1941. Barcelona, meanwhile, have won the La Liga title 26 times, the Copa del Rey a record 30 times, and the Champions League 5 times. If it is incredibly disproportionate rivalries you're looking for, look no further than the Barcelonian derby. To Espanyol's credit, despite having won very little, they have played in 84 of the 88 La Liga seasons, a record bettered by only Barcelona, Real Madrid and Athletic Bilbao. That means they have played Barcelona on many occasions, 299 occasions in fact to be specific, and excluding regional and minor competitions, the two teams have met 211 times, with Barcelona emerging victorious 123 times, 44 games ending in a draw, and Espanyol winning 44 times as well. Barcelona are among the biggest clubs on earth, meaning they cast one of the largest shadows, and Espanyol, unfortunately, fall firmly within it. That's all for today's video. Let us know what you think in the comments, give us a like if you enjoyed this video, and obviously make sure that you're subscribed to HITC Sevens.